My dad emptied my safe, saying your brother's tuition comes first. I said, then explain that to the IRS. That call cost them $36,000. So, we got this offer for $36,000, and my dad was all about how Liam's tuition had to come first. He emptied out the little safe where I'd been keeping my cash and then said, try explaining that to the IRS, which just set me off. I was so mad, I started filing a fraud report, knowing it was going to shake up our whole family. I had just moved back in with my folks, planning to stick around for maybe a couple of months, 3 tops, since I needed a place to crash after shutting down a small business I'd put my heart and soul into for 3 years. Plus, my girlfriend of 5 years dumped me 2 weeks after I sold the business. So yeah, I moved out of the apartment we shared, taking only a few bags and whatever shred of self-respect I had left. My parents lived in this neighborhood called North Bridge Hills, in a house that hadn't felt like home since I was 19. But it was familiar, and I was kind of out of options. Coming back was like that sleepy, peaceful feeling you get after surgery, calm, hopeful, and trying really hard not to feel ashamed. I helped out by buying groceries, fixing things around the house, and keeping quiet at dinner, not saying much unless someone asked me something directly. I had $36,000 saved up, stashed in a lockbox behind some shoeboxes in my closet. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough to keep me from totally crashing. I had saved it little by little over a decade. About 6 weeks after I moved back, we had a family get-together, just the usual crowd of uncles, aunts, cousins, and some kids I didn't recognize. My dad was on grill duty, my mom made way too much food, like always. My younger brother, Liam, made a big entrance, all proud about getting into this fancy liberal arts college in Ashford Bay, which none of us had ever heard about. But we all pretended to know what he was talking about. He gave me this weirdly tight and long hug, like he was already feeling sorry for something. That night, the house felt weirdly quiet after everyone left. The coffee machine was missing, and I just needed a moment to breathe. I wandered into the closet, moved the shoeboxes, and checked the safe. It looked fine, locked and unbroken, but I had a bad feeling. I put in the code, it beeped like normal, but when I turned the knob, it was empty. No cash, no documents, nothing. I stood there for a minute, hoping it would magically reappear. But it didn't. I rummaged through the room even though I knew deep down it was gone. Then I heard someone coming. My dad showed up in the doorway holding a coffee mug, looking like he was just going for a stroll. He told me they all decided that I shouldn't be living there for free since I wasn't contributing, and Liam needed money for his future at college. They figured my savings would cover his first semester. He even smiled, acting like I should be proud to help out. I was furious and told him I'd get a lawyer, told him what he did was illegal, and he better hope I don't take it further. I managed to say something I knew would hit a nerve, something that made him realize there would be consequences. He just laughed it off. The next morning my phone was blowing up with 37 missed calls, voicemails, and texts. My dad was yelling, my mom was losing it, and Liam was begging me not to make things worse. But I didn't respond. I'd already left before sunrise, with a duffel bag, my laptop, and a document they had no clue about, something with enough legal weight to make their lives difficult. I was already halfway to Blackwood Valley, heading to my Uncle Eugene's cabin. He picked up after 2 rings and said, "They really pulled that crap, huh? Good, now let's make them regret it. Don't go back there." Uncle Eugene's cabin wasn't exactly a cozy getaway. It was a 2-story house out in the deep woods, far from any towns or cities. He'd built most of it himself after quitting his finance job and deciding he was done with the modern world. The air smelled like pine, firewood, and gasoline. No internet, no TV, just a landline, a generator, and a silence that felt more real than anything I'd heard in ages. When I pulled up the gravel drive, Uncle Eugene was on the porch, sipping from a chipped mug and wearing a sweatshirt with the sleeves cut off. He didn't ask questions, just nodded and said, "Your room's upstairs." The next morning, we had scrambled eggs and sausage on metal plates while sitting on the porch. He lit a cigarette, even though he claimed he'd quit before. He told me to walk him through everything, so I did, every detail from the moment I noticed the money missing to my dad's fake happy face when he said it was a family decision to use my savings for Liam's tuition. I explained how my mom tried to act like it was some big, brave, charitable choice, and how Liam just stayed quiet the whole time, like he didn't want to pick a side. So, it turns out this whole thing wasn't about me at all, but Uncle Eugene didn't immediately get back to me. After a bit of a pause, he asked if I still had Grandpa's trust papers. I nodded, yep, they were tucked away in my purse. The trust wasn't huge, about $80,000 in total, but it had a clause just for me, protecting against any family trying to pull a fast one financially. I hadn't ever really thought about it much until that day. Uncle Eugene got up, wandered into the cabin, and came back with this dusty old folder. It was stuffed with papers from back in the day, old deals, letters, and digital receipts. And right there in the middle was a handwritten IOU from my dad from 2015. It showed he borrowed $36,000 from Uncle Eugene, the exact amount I'd secretly stashed. Uncle Eugene said he was always promising to pay it back with the next paycheck, next raise, or bonus. I'm done waiting. That night, I made a few calls. First, to the attorney who was handling my trust, then to our family bookkeeper who, let's just say, didn't really get along with my dad, and finally, to a lawyer friend in Lakeside City who's super detail-oriented and owed me one. Things started happening the next day. All it took was an email with the right documents attached, and my parents got the notice by registered mail. I didn't even bother listening to their reaction. 10 minutes later, Liam, my brother, called asking, "What did you do?" I just hung up without saying anything. I spent the next few days helping Uncle Eugene clear out the garage, and that's when I found a box of old videotapes. Most of them were dusty and unlabeled, but one had a note on it saying July 2002 reunion. That night, I popped it in just to kill some time. There was my dad on camera, loudly chatting by a bonfire with two of my uncles, bragging about how easy it was to move money around without anyone noticing. At one point, he even said, if I wanted to steal from my kids, they wouldn't notice. I couldn't believe it. The next morning, I copied the footage digitally and sent it to my attorney. I also sent a flash drive with the video to my mom without saying it was from me. 3 days later, my mom called. Not to apologize though, but to beg. I sat at Uncle Eugene's kitchen table, listening to her voicemail on speaker. She was crying so much she could hardly speak, saying she didn't understand what was happening and everything was falling apart. She pleaded with me to stop before it tore the family apart. I let the voicemail finish, then deleted it. Uncle Eugene, sipping his coffee across from me, broke the silence with, "Let's make this hurt." That was exactly what I needed to hear. We kicked things off with the trust. Once the audit started, everything moved fast. The trust was legally bulletproof against any family financial shenanigans, and my parents had set it all off by taking my money. It wasn't just about the $36,000 anymore. Every part of Grandpa's estate had to be checked and verified, like the car lease my parents got in Grandpa's name after he passed, and the vacation home they'd been secretly renting. In less than 2 days, a financial investigator got in touch with them. I wasn't even on those calls, but word got back to me that they were freaking out. While all this was going on, I made another move. When I first started my business, I set up a fake company called Liam C. Investments. It was real enough for legal purposes and, funnily enough, in Liam's name. I'd only used it once to send a joke invoice, but everything was legit. Now it was super handy. I dug through every weird transaction in that account, including the last $12,000 from my company that got moved just before I shut it down. With the documents I had, it looked like Liam had hidden untaxed money while applying for financial aid and scholarships. I sent anonymous tips to his university and the federal student aid office. By the third day, Liam's school funds were under review, his enrollment got canceled, and they kicked him out of his dorm, telling him not to come back until it was sorted out. He came home that weekend, calling me 6 times and then texting. He was all confused about what I was up to, saying he hadn't stolen anything and it wasn't fair. I ignored it all. He was right, it wasn't fair, but neither was having your own parents swipe your money and say it's for your brother's benefit. There was still more to do. Uncle Eugene pulled out the dusty old binder again. We got the debt paperwork signed and documented for the $36,000 my dad had borrowed from him 8 years ago, added the unpaid interest, and filed it with the local records office. Then we made a formal claim on their house. It wasn't the home I grew up in, but the fancier place they bought after Dad's job promotion, planning to sell it when they retired down south. Now, that house was under legal lock and key. So, I couldn't sell, lend, or use anything for a couple of days. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from an unknown number. It turned out to be my dad, but I ignored it and decided to check things out by driving past the house. When I got there, a moving truck was parked outside, but weirdly, no boxes were being loaded. My dad was pacing around the yard, talking a mile a minute on his phone. My mom was just sitting on the porch, her face buried in her hands. Meanwhile, Liam looked like he was in a trance, just leaning against the car. Parked on the curb was a black Mercedes SUV. I remembered when they got it, my mom called it a reward car for Liam's graduation, even though the ownership was in Liam's name. After I dug into some government records, I found out they listed it as a school-related asset in their filings, and my dad co-signed as the owner. So, I anonymously tipped off the IRS with all the dirt I had: fake college costs, hidden cash, co-signed debts tied to scholarship funds. The system flagged it pretty quickly, and an audit kicked off. Then, I made my big move. There's this small local news site in Glenmore that digs into scams and sketchy family stuff, not huge, but people read it. I sent them a secret message with an old video of my dad from 2002, where he joked about getting money from us kids. I also threw in a copy of the house lien, Liam's revoked aid letter, and the trust case files, telling them everything was legit and backing it up with evidence. The next morning, the headline was everywhere: Northbridge Hills family charged with financial crimes and inheritance fraud. It blew up fast. A local news site grabbed it, someone posted it on Reddit, and a former coworker of my dad's chimed in saying the company was already looking into him. That was the nail in his career coffin. By the end of the week, my dad was put on leave. When a news crew showed up outside their house, Liam texted me just 3 words: "Why now?" I didn't reply because I wanted to say, "You stood by and watched them hurt me." That evening, Uncle Eugene handed me a Pepsi. We don't talk much, but we just sat quietly, watching the sunset. He said, "This is just the beginning, kid." It was more than just a blog post, it was the storm that followed. As the news broke, the damage went from slow to catastrophic. My dad's face was blurred in the article, but people figured it out: his bosses, the golf club crowd, neighbors. Even this girl I hadn't talked to in years messaged me, saying, "Your parents are falling apart, huh?" Yikes. But shame wasn't the issue anymore, they were losing control of everything. 3 days after the story dropped, Uncle Eugene got a call from someone he knew at the estate court. My dad had filed something new, claiming the trust was misused, Grandpa's will was flawed, and everything needed another look. It was a desperation move, a last-ditch grab for control. Uncle Eugene just laughed and said, "Let him try, he doesn't know what we've got." He really didn't, because I still hadn't used the 2007 home video shot during Thanksgiving at our old house. In it, Dad was talking with his brother about how he was getting extra cash from private clients and never reported it, shifting money through accounts in our names without telling us. I turned the video into a digital file and secretly sent it to the IRS agent already on the case. But it was actually the bank records that broke my mom. Uncle Eugene suggested I request historical financial data for this fake company my parents had, LMC Investment. I thought we'd just find some weird deposit. Instead, what we uncovered about my mom was shocking. For over a year, she'd been quietly transferring small amounts, like $300 here, $150 there, from her account into that bogus one. The transfer notes weren't explicit, but a lot said things like Liam's tutoring or urgent. It was obvious she wasn't just in the loop, she was actively moving money around to make it look like Liam had enough personal funds, likely to improve his chances for financial aid. I didn't need to do anything else. When the university's aid department reviewed the entire file, they didn't just pause his benefits, they cut him off for good. Liam wasn't just put on hold, he was entirely removed. His funding was cancelled, his file labeled as fraudulent. 2 days later, Liam showed up at Uncle Eugene's. So, I was chilling outside the cabin, kinda lost in thought, when suddenly Liam showed up. He looked smaller, more worn out than I remembered. It was like life had been tough for him. Uncle Eugene stayed inside, probably sensing we needed some privacy. Liam just came out and asked, "Do you dislike me?" And I was like, "Nah, man, I just don't care anymore." He then dropped a bombshell on me: our mom had moved into the guest room, Dad wasn't talking to anyone, and they got a scary warning from the IRS about unpaid taxes and an audit. Mom was job hunting, and Dad had stopped shaving completely, which was really unlike him. But then came the kicker: Liam found something in Dad's drawer. He showed me a sealed letter from 2009 meant for Grandpa. It was a confession. Dad had borrowed $5,000 from Grandpa but never paid it back. At the bottom of the letter, Dad had written a warning not to tell Alex or Eugene because it would tear the family apart. It wasn't just about money, it was about control and keeping up appearances. Liam jetted off after that, without asking for forgiveness or shedding a tear. He just said, "I swear, I had no idea they were doing all this." That evening, Uncle Eugene read the letter. He shook his head and said, "Your dad's not just a liar, he's spineless." Then, with a smirk, he asked, "Wanna wrap this up? I've got one more play left." What he said next changed everything for me. I didn't care about making headlines or any of the drama. I just wanted my money back. They took $36,000 from me, savings I had stashed away over a decade from side gigs and being frugal. I had big plans for that money: security, freedom, a future. But they treated me like an ATM, and that lit a fire inside me. It wasn't just about the cash anymore, it was about taking control. Things escalated fast. Even after the fake business, IRS complaints, a house lien, an eviction notice, and making the news, I still didn't have my money back. Uncle Eugene was like, if you don't recover the cash, it's just noise. So, I dove into everything, transaction records, old statements, whatever I could get my hands on. And there it was, hiding in plain sight, a bank transfer for over $38,500 under Liam's name. I didn't recognize the bank, so I checked the routing number. Turns out, it was from Rivermount, a branch linked to where Dad used to work. I called the bank pretending to be Liam, needing to reset my account. I knew all his details, birthday, social security number, you name it. I got temporary access, and there it was, $38,500 sitting in a secret account labeled Education Disbursement Reserve. But it wasn't for scholarships or loans. It was my stolen savings. Uncle Eugene and I got his lawyer involved, officially demanding restitution with all the paperwork to back it up. But we knew legal stuff moves slowly. I decided to go bold. I went straight to their house, unannounced. Mom opened the door, looking exhausted. I asked to see Dad. He came to the door, arms crossed and looking defiant. I stared him down and told him I found the money and he had two choices: hand over every penny in 48 hours or I'd take the matter to civil court, file charges, and even throw in an old VHS recording for good measure. I let him know the trust team was ready to seize property, scrutinize every account, and investigate every shady transfer. No more stories or fake apologies, I just wanted my cash. He didn't say a word, just stood there. I walked away. 2 days later, I got an alert from my bank, a direct deposit of $36,000. No notes, no names, just the money. But I wasn't happy. I knew it wasn't guilt that made him pay up, it was fear. Uncle Eugene grinned and said, let's keep him shaking. So, there I was, suddenly 18 grand richer, at least on paper. The money was sitting pretty in my account, and there was no apology or any message from my dad, just what I wanted. It was the fastest he'd acted in years. When I told Uncle Eugene about it, he brewed us some hot tea. We clinked our cups, and he said, that's something, but if you think he's done, you really don't know your father. Of course, he was right. Around 2 a.m. that night, I got a one-liner from my mom, he's about to post about you. It didn't click at first, but a couple of hours later, someone from my high school days messaged me a link. It was a Reddit post, some throwaway account ranting in a parenting group. The title said it all: our son stole our future and is trying to ruin our lives. Warning to other parents. The whole thing painted me as lazy, selfish, and worthless. According to him, I came home empty-handed, didn't help, threw their kindness back at them, and messed up Liam's plans. He even claimed I abused the system with sketchy lawyers and old family grudges. Oh, and Uncle Eugene? Apparently, he was the one egging me on, which I almost found funny. The weirdest bit? My dad ended the post with, if anyone knows how to stop a grown child from ruining your family name, message me. I'm serious. I didn't bother responding, Reddit handled it. Strangers tore his post apart, linked it to news articles, shared proof, and embarrassed him so thoroughly that he ditched the entire profile in less than half a day. I saved everything just in case, but that was the breaking point for me. I told Uncle Eugene I was done reacting. I wanted out, not from just the house and the family name, but from the whole legacy. So, I did something I'd been mulling over for weeks. I officially filed to change my last name. It was no big effort, just a bit of paperwork and a few stamps at the clerk's office. But stepping outside afterward felt like someone had finally cut through a noose that had been choking me for way too long. 2 days later, I packed up and moved to a small apartment nearby. Nothing fancy, just a quiet spot on the top floor of a 3-story building with a fire escape ladder and a clunky old heating system. But it was mine. I scored a second-hand couch off Craigslist, grabbed some used vinyls from a thrift store, and set up my old sound system. I played the same album on repeat for days. I didn't tell my parents where I was, didn't leave an address, changed my number, and blocked any contact. They had no way to reach me. The only thing I left behind was a secured file on my laptop, just in case I ever felt the need to reach out. Inside was a single message: you taught me to stand my ground, then acted surprised when I did. But I'm not mad, I'm free. Uncle Eugene was just getting started. Thanks for hanging with me till the end. If you're into these stories, hit subscribe and the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode.